In 2009, a video of a slow loris being tickled went viral. The animal raised its tiny arms above its head. It had enormous round eyes, a soft rounded face, and moved with a kind of deliberate slowness that makes something look gentle by default. The video circulated across every platform for years and eventually accumulated hundreds of millions of views combined. People described it as the cutest thing they had ever seen. Some spent hundreds of dollars acquiring one illegally as a pet. Here is what none of those people knew. The slow loris is the only venomous primate on Earth. The gland visible on the inside of its elbow secretes a toxic compound. When it raises its arms in that pose everyone found so endearing, it is coating its teeth with venom. The bite causes progressive tissue death. There are documented cases of anaphylactic shock. There are records of people losing fingers. The animals in those tickling videos were not enjoying the interaction. Raising the arms in captivity is a fear response. The animal is preparing to defend itself. The reason it doesn't is because wildlife traffickers remove the teeth before sale. With nail clippers. Every single one of those videos is a terrified animal with its only defense physically removed, being laughed at by someone who thought they were playing with something sweet. Hundreds of millions of views. We decided the slow loris was adorable. The slow loris had no say in the matter. And the gap between those two things, between what we decided the animal was and what the animal actually is what this entire video is about. Scientists have a name for the mechanism that makes this happen. Konrad Lorenz identified it in 1943 and called it kinshentema, baby schema. Certain physical features trigger an automatic caregiving response in humans. Large eyes relative to the face, round head, small nose, soft features, slow, clumsy movement. These traits evolved in human infants to ensure adults would invest in their survival. The problem is that evolution didn't restrict them to human infants. Plenty of other species produce the same neurological response. And when they do, something specific happens. We stop observing and start projecting. We assign the animal a personality. Gentle, innocent, safe. And then we largely stop paying attention to what it actually does. Sea otters are one of the most photographed animals on Earth. They float on their backs. They use rocks to crack open shells on their chests. They hold hands with their partners while they sleep, so they don't drift apart in the current. Every viral sea otter image is some version of this. In 2010, marine biologists published a study that had been sitting in peer review for some time, partly because the researchers genuinely weren't sure how to frame what they documented. Male sea otters had been observed grabbing harbor seal pups, holding them underwater and waiting. Not for food. No territorial function. No nutritional benefit. Sometimes for over an hour. The leading current explanation is redirected mating behavior, something that misfires in the absence of receptive females and attaches to the nearest available target, which, in documented cases, was seal pups. The hand-holding otter and this otter are the same animal. Not two different species, not an aberration. The same animal, exhibiting both behaviors, completely consistent with its own biology. We just photographed one of them more. Chimpanzees share approximately 98.7% of our DNA. For most of the 20th century, that number was cited as evidence of kinship, of closeness. Jane Goodall went into Gombe in 1960 expecting to find something resembling a gentler version of us. A simpler one. What she found over the following decades took years to fully process and longer to publish.
Chimpanzees wage war.
Not territorial conflict.
Organized, sustained, strategic war.
In the early 1970s, a community at Gombe split into two factions. The larger group systematically hunted down every member of the smaller group over a period of roughly 4 years. They sent patrols to the borders of the smaller group's range. When they found a lone individual, the patrol attacked as a coordinated unit, holding the victim down while others struck. The smaller community was eliminated entirely. Goodall later wrote that witnessing this brought her close to despair, not because chimpanzees were capable of it, but because of what it implied about where our own capacity for organized violence originates. The same brain that uses tools, mourns its dead, and raises its young also does this. Not as a malfunction, as a strategy that works. Intelligence doesn't make animals gentler. Sometimes it just makes them more precise. Penguins have a reputation that is almost entirely constructed. The waddling, the tuxedo coloring, the documented cases of a parent standing in Antarctic blizzards for months to keep a single egg warm. Every children's book, every animated film, every nature documentary has told essentially the same story.
Loyal.
Devoted. Endearing. In 1911, a British scientist named George Murray Levick spent a field season in Antarctica as the first person to conduct sustained close observation of an Adelie penguin colony. What he documented disturbed him enough that he wrote his findings in a separate private document, in Greek, specifically to restrict access to educated readers. He then removed all of it from his official published report. That document stayed hidden for nearly 100 years. When it was finally published in 2012, researchers described its contents as a systematic record of sexual coercion and violence within the colony, behaviors directed at females, juveniles, and between males, that, if described without the word penguin, nobody would file under cute. The scientific community in 1911 decided the public wasn't ready. So they buried it. For a century, the penguin's reputation remained intact. The actual penguin was always there, doing what it does, completely unaware it had a reputation to maintain. Meerkats are the cooperative family structure that nature documentaries return to reliably. The group stands watch in shifts. When a predator appears, the sentinel calls the alarm and everyone takes cover. Older members babysit while parents forage. The community raises pups collectively, shares resources, and functions as a unit. All of that is accurate. Here's what those documentaries consistently leave out. The dominant female in a meerkat group will kill the pups of any subordinate female who becomes pregnant without clearance. Not occasionally, reliably. The subordinate female is then sometimes forced to nurse the dominant female's surviving pups in place of the ones she just lost. The cooperative structure functions because someone at the top is enforcing strict control over reproduction with complete consistency. The warmth is real. The altruism is real. And so is the mechanism that keeps the system stable. Both exist in the same group, at the same time, as part of the same arrangement. Rabbits only need a single paragraph. Mother rabbits, under specific stress conditions, loud environments, unfamiliar smells, a sense that the surrounding space is not safe, will consume their own litter. Not rarely. Commonly enough that rabbit breeders have standardized precautions and a term for it. Sometimes immediately after birth. Sometimes days in. The evolutionary logic is straightforward. A rabbit that ends an endangered litter can be pregnant again within 24 hours. Evolution selected for maternal survival over any individual litter. The result is an animal that fills Easter baskets and sits in children's petting zoos, and is also doing this in barns across the world on a regular basis. Nobody puts that on the card. Here is the thing that's easy to miss in all of this. None of these animals are monsters. Monster implies awareness of what the designation means. An otter doesn't have a framework for what it's doing to the seal pup. A chimpanzee on a war patrol isn't experiencing what we would call cruelty. A mother rabbit isn't making what we would call a choice. That is actually the more unsettling thought. Everything covered here, the venom, the drowning, the 4-year war, the document buried in Greek, the infanticide, none of it was malice. None of it was cruelty in the sense we experience cruelty. It's just what these animals are underneath the version of them we decided to see. We looked at the big eyes and the round faces, and we wrote a story. The story felt true because we needed it to. But the slow loris was always venomous. The penguin colony was always what Levick saw. The sea otter has always been this. We just decided somewhere along the way that we'd rather keep looking at the hand-holding. The sea otter still holds hands with its partner while they sleep. That part is also true. Both things live in the same animal simultaneously. That isn't a contradiction. That's just nature. And we're the only species that ever looked at nature and expected it to be innocent. They were never performing for us. They were never asking to be beloved. They were just doing what they do, completely indifferent to the story we built around them. The version we photographed and the version we buried in Greek were always equally real. We just chose which one to look at.